morning, everyone. My name is Christina Gray. I'm the House Leader for the Official Opposition Caucus. The government has just finished hosting their pre-session press conference. And I really want to respond just by saying that the official opposition is very excited about getting back into the legislature to discuss the issues that are important to Albertans, as well as holding the UCP government to account. We have a great team of newly formed shadow ministers who will be eager to dig deep into their portfolios to represent issues and constituents. Priority areas for us will be healthcare, education, housing, jobs and affordability, the economy, and public safety. We're very excited that we will be able to introduce some private members' bills to reflect some of these important policy priorities for both the Official Opposition Caucus and all Albertans. What we heard from the government at their press conference are pieces of legislation that are dangerous and irresponsible and do not reflect the priorities for all Albertans. The government House Leader spoke about the Alberta Bill of Rights, something that is not a top priority for Alberta families, something that at best will be symbolic, at worst could continue to overburden our judicial system, as well as attacks on some of our most vulnerable children here in our province, perpetuating misinformation and demonizing groups of people for who they are, as well as changes to the education system. We know that Alberta has the highest rate of STIs in tween pregnancy. We know that good sex education delays the onset of sexual experiences, and yet they are talking about a system that will overburden teachers and parents with Education Act changes to opt in for sex health information. So, over the past summer, we've done the work traveling the province, listening to Albertans. We hear over and over not only that the government's priorities do not reflect those of Alberta, but that the UCP has demonstrated incompetence and continues to show veins of corruption in the ways that they have changed ethic rules to benefit themselves, their attendance at playoff hockey box seats with potential donors, incompetence with burning up $2 billion on the Green Line. There are many, many issues that have been raised. You will see us addressing those through question period and bill debate. And we are looking forward to getting into the legislature to get the job done. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks. We'll start in the room.
Yep. What will be those private member bills?
Thank you very much. So you will see members from my caucus introducing private members' bills that will touch on everything from our relationship and consultation with Indigenous communities, our relationship and work with Albertans with disabilities, affordability issues, as well as healthcare. But I'm not able to give you the specific titles just yet. It's a quick 5-week session. So we hope to get those private members' bills introduced early so that we can talk to Albertans about the priorities of the official opposition. We also still have on the order paper several pieces of private members' business that's continuing from the spring session. So there will be some conversation about that as well.
Yep. And your new leader is not elected, it's not an MLA, so how do you see that playing out in the ledge?
So I'm very honored that our new leader, Naheed Nenshi, has asked me to act as the leader of the official opposition in the Legislative Assembly. But to be very clear, Naheed Nenshi continues to be the leader of the Alberta NDP, and he will be watching the proceedings extremely closely. He trusts his caucus, his shadow ministers to represent us well in the legislature. He will be available to speak with media, and we look forward to working with our new leader in the work that we do in the House.
We just heard from the House Leader talk about how he widely consulted on this range of legislation that they plan to introduce. It's not necessarily lining up with what we're hearing from Albertans in terms of their top priorities. So who do you think is guiding this legislative agenda?
Well, thank you so much for the question, because the priorities that the UCP government is moving forward with does not line up with the priorities that we are hearing about from Albertans at large, particularly Albertans in Edmonton and in Calgary, where the top issues consistently come forward as healthcare, as so many people find themselves waiting too many hours for emergency room help, can't find a family doctor in many regions of this province. Affordability, with things getting more and more expensive across this province, and the government taking no actions on affordability. When asked directly, the government House Leader could only talk about this being a low-tax jurisdiction, ignoring the fact that they have not actually brought forward a now 11-month late tax cut that was promised by this government. He's referred to a 4-year mandate. The promise was January. They have not addressed issues of public safety. In fact, over the last 5 years under the UCP, people are feeling less safe. They have not addressed the issues with housing, and we are looking at a winter season with an increased rate of houselessness, an increased rate of amputations. All of these issues are top priority for Albertans. Instead, what we see an agenda being brought forward that is top priorities for the fringe grassroots elements of the Premier's political party. It is shameful, and it is not addressing the needs of Alberta families. We just saw more than 8,000 people in front of the legislature talking about affordability, the need to make sure we are protecting and defending our healthcare system, the need to make sure we are supporting our education workers in our school system. We have the lowest per student funding in the country, and yet a symbolic Bill of Rights is the top priority for this government. It is a complete mismatch between what the UCP government is doing and what Albertans are looking for.
I guess just as a follow-up, in terms of focusing in on your party, following up on my colleague's question, the fact that the leader doesn't have a seat must pose some challenges for you. I guess how do you see those challenges shaping up, and when will we see him run?
So, not having Leader Naheed Nenshi in the Assembly means that I will need to play the role of Leader of the Official Opposition while we are in session for these 5 weeks. It does mean that I will need to be, as will our shadow ministers, in very constant contact, strong contact with the Leader. He will be available, and his will be reflected in the work that you see us do, because he is committed to listening to Albertans and their priorities and representing their views through the work we do in the legislature. And he will get a seat and become an MLA when the time and opportunity presents itself.
Hi, Sean Meadow with City News. City News recently did some polling and found that affordability across the country is the #1 issue. As many as 80% of people in Edmonton and Calgary are struggling with bills. So what legislation should be brought forward during the session? What would the NDP do to help people with affordability?
No, thank you so much for that question. I will say we will have a private member's bill that speaks a little bit to affordability. I will also suggest that the government keeping their promises that they made in the election, that a significant tax reduction that would have helped with affordability could have been put in place 11 months ago when it was promised. This government has been evading their commitment that they made during an election to all Albertans, and I think that's a challenge. And then utilities and insurance are 2 big areas that we could see legislation to make real measures to address the affordability challenges that we have. More investment in housing to make sure that the housing market could better support Albertans and their needs. Certainly, we are looking to hold the government accountable. We know Albertans are looking for these issues, and when I look at the government with their press conference released the list of legislation they are introducing, there is nothing on this agenda to address affordability, and it is frankly shameful that the government suggests that they are working on Alberta's priorities when they can't include that.
You mentioned education workers. It sounds like CUPE is not going to accept the offer that's on the table. It sounds like the school board can't offer any more. So what needs to happen there? What would the NDP do to get those workers a fair paycheck and keep them working?
So this really needs to be laid at the doorstep of the UCP government and the way that they put their hands on the scale when it comes to bargaining, the restrictions that they place on school boards. We need a government that respects workers, that doesn't interfere with the collective bargaining process, that acknowledges that there are workers who have not seen an increase during an affordability crisis of high inflation for 10 years. These are workers who are working for very low wages, predominantly women, doing very difficult jobs. The government, the UCP government led by Danielle Smith, is the one that needs to come to the table to recognize the strain the system is under, to recognize the hard work people are doing, and to stop interfering in the collective bargaining process.
Do we have any more questions on the floor?
Yep,
Yep.
Happy Melly Theron with Global.
Go on.
Just in that, just in 11 a.m. that we were all listening to, there was some questions thrown out about invoking the notwithstanding clause that we didn't hear much details in terms of whether that would be invoked or not. I just wanted just to get your reaction on that.
I think that the government should be upfront with the people of Alberta when they are targeting vulnerable children, when they are trying to demonize a group of people and perpetuating misinformation. As we have seen in other jurisdictions across Canada, we know that the courts have ruled that there has been unconstitutional overreach, and I think we are at risk of seeing that here, that the government won't have an honest conversation about what they're trying to do is, again, a real problem and something that we will be holding them to account in the legislature with the team of shadow ministers and others that we will have in the official opposition.
Do you have a follow-up? Any more questions in the room for now? Okay, I'm just gonna go, Judge, can I just go to that? We have a couple texted questions from.
Texted questions,
Just
perfect.
because of the Zoom, we have an issue from Zoom. So from Lisa Johnson, she wants to know, is this government catering to the fringe elements of the UCP?
So the government is catering to their fringe elements, absolutely, especially when you see in any survey about the priorities for Alberta families, whether it's in Edmonton, rural, Calgary, mid-cities, everywhere, affordability, healthcare, public safety, housing. These are the key issues that Albertans have, and yet the very first legislation will be a Bill of Rights Act that has not been asked for, and many have said might just be symbolic or might be problematic with our court system, as well as that attack on vulnerable children. We need to see a government that is working for the province of Alberta, not just trying to win a leadership race.
So her follow-up, and maybe you answered this, and a bad press secretary wasn't listening, but what will the NDP do if the UCP invokes a notwithstanding clause in passing their legislation targeting trans folks?
Thank you for that question. I can't speak to what the Alberta NDP would do should the government get to the point of invoking a notwithstanding clause. I have not seen a notwithstanding clause invoked in my time in the Alberta legislature in the past 10 years. I hope that our legislature continues to put forward legislation that benefits Alberta citizens and is constitutional. I think that's a really important base bar that the government should be able to clear. If they cannot, I will have to work with my leader and with my caucus to respond to that.
And then we have one question from Catherine Gakowski, is what the NDP intends to introduce in terms of bills and motions, and whether the order is expected to stay the same as on the order paper.
Oh, bills and motions and orders on the order paper. I will say to Catherine, I know you watch the details of what's going on. There will be an early order paper coming out, so you'll have a chance to see any changes to those orders and motions. I don't think that we are going to see significant change in what's on the version of the order paper that's out there now, but I stand to be corrected. But the early order paper should be there before things get started on Monday.
Any more questions in the room? One more pass?
Well,
Yeah.
I can come back on Nenshi still, but I know he can't sit in the ledge in the chamber, but can he lead caucus meetings? Is he leading caucus meetings? What's his rights and responsibilities in the ledge as a leader and unelected?
So the question is talking about Naheed Nenshi as leader, what his rights and responsibilities are within our caucus. So since his outstanding victory with such strong support from our party back in, was it June? Back in June, Naheed has been working with our caucus constantly. He is at caucus meetings with us. I think you will see a special guest in the gallery on our first day of the Alberta legislature. He may not have a seat on the floor, but he will be able to be in the Alberta legislature, the People's House. So we're looking forward to seeing him there. For details on what he's allowed to do, not do within the legislature, that might be a better question directed just at the Speaker, because we have seen this before. Jason Kenney was an unelected leader of his party for a time. Danielle Smith was an unelected leader of her party before she got her seat as a Wild Rose MLA back in the day. So there's precedent for how this is being managed. But certainly I want Albertans to know that Naheed Nenshi, the commitments he made during the leadership race, are all key parts of the work that the official opposition will be doing this fall.
Okay, one last question, if anybody has one, and then we have to run, sorry.
Yeah, just if you can provide any more details in terms of the legislation, the bills that you plan to introduce around healthcare and affordability specifically.
Unfortunately, I can't. I will leave it to my shadow ministers and the bill sponsors to be able to provide more detail on that. But we will be holding issue-specific, bill-specific press conferences for each of those private members' bills to really make sure Albertans know the work the official opposition is going to be doing to address healthcare, affordability, genuine engagement with Indigenous communities, and making sure we're supporting disabled Albertans in a way that I think contrasts starkly with lack that we're seeing from the UCP government.